There we are. Welcome, everyone. It's great to have everyone with us tonight. My name is Michael Bloch, and thank you for joining this webinar hosted by Christian Vision South Africa. I'll be your host today. First, a brief introduction on Christian Vision. Christian Vision is a global Christian charity with evangelism at its heart. We have a strong desire to serve and equip Christians and the local church in their evangelistic endeavors. If you would like to know more about CV and what we do, you're more than welcome to visit our website. That's cvglobal.co. Today's session, MinistryCompass, is labeled Where to From Here. We'll unpack some of the most significant and recent changes in the ministry landscape. We've got a jam-packed hour-long session planned, so I don't want to take up too much more time. There are a few housekeeping details that I just want to let you know. We are recording the session, so you're more than welcome to refer back to this webinar in the follow-up email that you received if you did register. We will try our utmost best to interact with you during the course of the session. We love your interaction. We will fire off a Zoom poll as soon as when we do that. There will be Q&A towards the end of this hour-long session. So if you'll find the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom app, and please fire off any questions you'd like to us. You can upvote those, and we'll come back and answer those as much as we can towards the end of the session. There is also a technical support member online. If you're having any difficulties within Zoom, please just privately message CV Technical and someone will help you with that. To get the interaction flowing, let's fire off that Zoom poll right now, and you can go ahead and answer that. Those questions will be anonymous, so there you are. So just answer a quick question. Where in Africa are you viewing this from? Or even if you're not in Africa, just let us know, and we'd love to hear from you. And then who are you representing, yourself or an organization? It'll be great to just get some feedback and we'll get some interaction going. On the side note, we are streaming this live to both Facebook and YouTube. So I'd just like to take this time and acknowledge our social media audiences. Welcome. It's great to have you with us too. Unfortunately, you won't be able to interact with us in the live polls or the Q&A, but if anything sparks your interest, please do send us a mail to africa@cvglobal.co. Before I introduce our panelists for this evening, let's close our eyes and pray together. Father, thank you for this time that we can spend together. We give it to you, and our desire is to put you first in the session. Holy Spirit, we ask that you guide our thoughts and our conversations as we spend this time together. Thank you for giving us this opportunity just to speak and interact with so many people. I ask that whoever and wherever our audience is, Lord, that you bless them and that you keep them safe. Open our hearts and minds to what we are about to hear. Lord, we bless you. We thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. So it's great to have everyone with us. Let me introduce our panelists this evening. Here we go. Let me switch this view. So first up, we've got Heinz Olderwacher. He is the director of the Africa and the Middle East region for Christian Vision. Heinz will be speaking on interruption or disruption, how ministry horizons have shifted post-pandemic, and why digital will help you find true north. Heinz, give us a wave. Yay. And then next up will be Renil Mutasamy. Renil is the marketing manager here at CV Africa. He'll be speaking from pews to views, what your live stream views actually mean and what they don't. Give us a wave, Renil. Yeah. And then heading over to the rose amongst us thorns here this evening, Felini Naidu is our content manager here at CV Africa. She'll be speaking on connecting through content, why you don't need big budgets to stand out. Give us a wave, Felini. Great. And of course, bringing up it all together in the end, last but certainly not least, Nick Parker, community manager here at CV Africa. Nick will be speaking on finding seekers, how geolocation tech is transforming the mission field. That's me over for it right now. It's great to see everyone. And Heinz, over to you.
That's great. Thanks, Mike. Thanks. It's wonderful to be with you today. It's great to see you. I hope you're well. I hope you're rested. I hope you're safe. I hope you're strong. I don't know about you, but I've been on 1,001 Zoom calls, just like this one in the last while. I'm sure you share my experience. And when I look at the audience during those Zoom calls, and when I look at the attendees, I think it's very interesting. Half of the attendees seem to be, more relaxed than ever, very, rested, relaxed, spent some extra time with family, everything's going well. And the other half seems to be, tired, stressed, seemingly, worried, concerned about all kinds of things that go along with the season. Now, I'll let you place yourself. I don't know what group you are in, but there seems to be no in between. People seem to be either really doing well or really struggling. And of course, this is reflected in the data as well. When you look at some of the studies that's been done amongst ministry leaders during this time, I think one of the most interesting ones was a study by Lifeway Research, in which only 6% of pastors said that they were doing well and that they didn't have significant additional stress to deal with because of this COVID season. I think at one point even Barna Group did a study, and 49% of pastors said that they're so busy, so stressed by this specific season that they didn't have enough time to that they didn't spend as much time as always on just spending time in prayer, spending time in the Bible, spending time on their spiritual development. So I don't need to tell you that in the last few months we've gone through a fundamental shift. I'm sure you'll agree. We've gone through a fundamental shift, and the world has shifted in two ways, really. Firstly, just a shift on the macro scale, right? So the world itself has shifted in terms of how it works. Socially, economically, in some countries, even politically, things have shifted on a grand scale. But also, and more importantly, the world has shifted in terms of what it looks like for the day-to-day life of the people that we minister to, the people that we minister to as ministries and ministry leaders. The world of those people has shifted significantly in some cases. And so the fundamental question really is, have we gone through just a temporary interruption? Is what we're living through just a temporary interruption, or are we talking about a real disruption? And when I use the term disruption, I use it in the sense that it's sometimes used in tech journalism. So a real shift in focus, a complete shift in context. The way that Uber, for example, disrupted the taxi industry. The biggest taxi company with that owns no taxis. You've seen that phrase before, probably online. So have we gone through a temporary interruption, or have we gone through a major disruption? And I think the answer to that question, my background's in theology, and in theology they always say, it's not necessarily an A or B answer. It's often a both and answer. And I think the answer to this question is a both and answer. So some things have shifted significantly and will change significantly going forward, and other things are exactly the same. And I'm going to spend the next 20 minutes or so just discussing that with you a little bit. I'm not going to keep it simple, going to keep it practical, but I want to chat about just firstly looking at some things that have stayed the same, things that are set to remain in place, important things that will stay the same. And then we're going to chat about some of the things that have shifted, some of the things we need to take cognizance of as we do ministry going forward. So what stayed the same? firstly, I think from a ministry perspective, of course, and those of us who, are ministry leaders or who are creatives in one way or another, ministering to other people, first thing that stays the same is community. Community is key to ministry and will remain key to ministry. So your ability to foster a sense of community amongst your tribe, pulling together people, giving them a sense of belonging, is going to remain key to your impact in ministry. It's going to remain a marker of impactful ministry. Community, and ironically, we've been forced into isolation, and that's exactly what has drawn people into new forms of community. And often that community, that form of community, happens in a digital context. But that sense of community as a marker of success in ministry is going to stay with us. And of course, in ministry, we're talking about more than just a sense of belonging, just some loose sense of being together. In ministry, there's this idea of koinonia in Scripture, which is really a deep sense of unity, and the fact that we're woven together as the body of Christ. And I think churches and ministries that get it, that do it right, understand the difference between the community model versus the performance model. And the way you could potentially answer that question to yourself is, when you think about your ministry, when you think about church or whatever your area of ministry is, do you primarily see that as associated with a specific day, maybe a Sunday, at being at a building, as setting up some kind of an event, or does what happened on a Sunday simply punctuate a deeper, more practical, ongoing expression of ministry and what it means to live in constant community? And of course, there's a scriptural basis for that. I'm thinking of Hebrews 10:25 that says, let us not neglect meeting together. But just a side note, I think that's also important to mention in terms of community, especially in the season that we find ourselves in now. It's interesting to see a shift happening in where people find their primary sense of community, where in the past a lot of people's sense of community has come from corporate like setups, workplace, maybe a sports club or some kind of a hobby club or something like that. Increasingly, we are seeing in this COVID season, especially, people finding their primary community in their family, in a family setup. Many of us, to many of us, this COVID season has meant more time with family. That's an important thing to recognize, because strong families lead to strong ministries. Those two often go hand in hand. So I just want to throw that in that point. But here's the thing: churches of influence 5 years from now, the churches who are going to be influential, the ministries that are going to make a significant impact, are going to be the ones who recognize, who realize that community is key. Community is the key aspect of ministry. A second thing that stays the same is the place of the church as a focal point in society, as one of those focus points around which society and around which communities revolve. Churches have always, and ministries have always carried influence. And maybe in the last few years, some of that influence has waned. The voice of the church increasingly has been marginalized, has been maybe even actively suppressed in some ways. I certainly grew up in a time where what the church said mattered, and what what pastors and other ministry leaders said was respected and actually really mattered to society. And what's interesting in seasons like this, in seasons of crisis, especially interestingly in times of pandemics, often the church emerges with a greater degree of influence. I'm thinking of things like, for example, when you look back at the Spanish flu back in, what was it, 1918, around there, you know, it was the work of the church that really defined the response to that pandemic. You know, the sister, you know, the work of the church sisters who went out and acted as nurses and took care of people and looked after people. I mean, that movement to this day is seen as almost like a model of crisis response, and it had an influence. It had an influence on you know, on the profession of nursing and the way that women was recognized in the workplace, and a whole bunch of knock-on effects. And the church emerged from it with greater influence. And I think churches who take an active role and ministries who play an active role in their communities are going to emerge from this with greater influence and so greater potential for impact. And again, the churches who emerge from this with the ability to make greater impact in ministry, and the ministries who emerge from this with the ability to make greater impact, are the ones who understand that the church serves and ministry serves as a focal point in community, as a place where we pool our resources, where we pull together people, where we bring together what we have in order to make a change to the world around us. So those are two things that will remain in place and that are really, really important in doing ministry. Now, what's changed permanently, or at least for the next 5 to 10 years? What has changed because of this COVID season? And I want to look just at a few practical things that's changed. Number one, what has clearly changed is that people have new, I'll call it a life rhythm. There's a new rhythm to life that is likely to remain in place, at least in part. You know, data shows that people have connected with something that they've lost touch with. And for many, that looks like a better work-life balance. It looks like more time with family. It looks like a little bit more downtime. I think one of our colleagues expressed it in an interesting way. He said, my life used to be like a techno beat. You know, it used to be this pulse, and it used to be fast. And I used to, you know, just struggle to keep up with it. It used to be very, very fast. And right now, my life is more like a jazz beat, like a jazz groove. It's a little slower. It's a little more deliberate, and it's punctuated by these little periods of intensity. But on the whole, the rhythm of my life looks a little different. And this is reflected in you know, in ministry as well. I think Barna, the Barna Group in the US, used on one of their in one of their studies the term of a new Sunday morning, like what the new Sunday morning looks like. And that Sunday morning rhythm increasingly looks, you know, it's a Sunday morning that's slower, that maybe starts a little later, that involves more flexibility, that involves more time with family, that is, on the whole, a little bit less structured. And the way that that's seen in practice, and where this matters often to ministries. One of the examples of that, for example, is the way that we've streamed our services and some of what we do as ministries. We've gone into live streaming those things. You know, 96% of pastors in the US say that they're streaming their services online. Many churches offer on-demand streaming, but now many churches offer that on-demand after the fact. So where at first the focus was on just the live streaming as it happens, what's happened over time, the focus has shifted from people consuming those feeds to consuming it a little later. So in the States, to give you an example, 29% of practicing Christians say they now take advantage of the on-demand option rather than the live streaming option. And I think it's very likely that that trend is going to increase the longer we go with this streaming option. So what's happening, and this is important to see, is there's a shift from what's called synchronous engagement to asynchronous engagement. So synchronous engagement is like a phone call, right? So if I call you, you have to engage with me in real time on the other end of the line. That's synchronous engagement. Asynchronous engagement is more like, say, a WhatsApp message, for example. I send you a message and you decide on your time when to engage with that message and when to send it back to me. What often happens in asynchronous communication is that the person on the other end has more time to consider their response. They sometimes engage more deeply. They tend to share more than they do in synchronous communication. And you see this. You see the shift from synchronous to asynchronous for example, in counseling, in the way that asynchronous counseling services have now arisen. So in the past, booking a counseling session, for example, with your pastor, that was making a date, getting together, sitting and talking on a couch. These days, increasingly, we're seeing services like some of the companies like BetterHelp, and there's a few of them doing the rounds at the moment, and increasingly doing so, where you message a counselor and they engage with you back, and then in your time, you think through, you process, you write back at a time that is more convenient to you. And so what's happening in that sphere is the trend is moving from synchronicity to asynchronicity. And I think that is something that we're going to see increasingly in ministries, where people are more aware of their time, where people have a slower, more deliberate rhythm to life. They are going to take up options like that. And of course, I'm not saying that you shouldn't do synchronous communication. I'm not saying that you're not supposed to ever have a church service anymore or live stream whatever you're doing. But what I am saying is that ministries who understand the difference between synchronous and asynchronous communication, and who understand that there are advantages to that asynchronous method, will be at an advantage. They will be able to take advantage of some of these trends in ministry. The other thing that I wanted to share just is around what has changed is an increasing focus we're seeing in digital, real world, hybrid models of ministry. So I think one of the most important places that this comes across is in the past, when we would think about setting up a gathering. We would assume that gathering would be a real world gathering, and then we would do an online gathering if it added something to the equation, only if. Right now, what's happening and what's increasingly likely to happen as we go out of the season, and we're already seeing this in the real world, is that question is flipped on its head. Ministries, churches, and companies would rather say, let's do a digital event and then do real world if that adds something to the equation. So you're seeing that being shifted on its head. And more churches are likely to embrace these digital, real world hybrid models. One of the interesting things about the season has been seeing the increase in engagement for ministries who have decided to do things digitally, right? So, you know, a significant percentage of pastors are saying, hey, I have more people watching my live stream than ever attended my church, right? I have more people engaging with me online than I have in my church views. I've a few pastor friends like that who were saying, you know, I used to minister to 100 people in church on a Sunday, and right now I have, you know, hundreds, if not thousands of people engaging with my church, with my ministry on any given day of the week. And of course, we're not saying now that all of a sudden this means that everything will be digital. We're talking about a hybrid model. But what we are saying that in some cases, it will make more sense to engage with people digitally rather than having this or just focusing always on real world events. A good practical example of that is, for example, many churches tend to communicate vision, at least short-term vision, tend to communicate about new programs and initiatives or new plans during midweek, let's call them vision casting sessions. So you'll, you know, let's say we'll set up a vision night on a Tuesday night and people will gather at church. Well, what this increase in digital engagement has shown us is that you are likely to be able to communicate things like that where it makes sense. You'll be able to communicate that to a much larger percentage of your congregation, often in a more compelling way, if you choose to do it digitally. And while that is not the go-to impulse of most pastors and ministry leaders at this point in time, increasingly people will begin to consider the value, the real world value of communicating things like that digitally, because they'll know that they'll have a wider audience, a bigger percentage of their congregation, for example, engaged in those sessions. So we're likely to see way more of these real world digital hybrid approaches to ministry and to church events and ministry events. The final thing that I want to refer to that has changed significantly is financial outlooks. Church giving, there's no other way to put this. For most, church giving, ministry giving, charity giving has been heavily impacted by this season. And that's not going to go away anytime soon, at least not in the next few months, in the next few years. It's happened, by the way, for two reasons. Firstly, just because of a shift from in-person giving to digital giving, right? So some of that has to do with the fact that digital giving often just represents that little bit more friction, and so giving decreases because of that. But also, and significantly, and this is what's going to lead into the longer term change, is that the economic challenges that we're facing presently, that will have an impact to a greater or lesser degree, depending on where you are, depending on what you do, but that will impact financial outlook for your congregants, but also for you as a minister. I think it was Bonner Group who did research, and immediately within the first week, pastors started reporting that giving was down on average up to about 62% of what they were used to. So I think it was Lifeway Research actually that said 3 in 4 pastors reported that they had church members who were earning less because of a reduction in work hours. 2 in 5 pastors said that at least some of their church attendees have lost their jobs. And of course, what that translates to is less charitable giving. And that's likely to be the case for at least a period of time into the future. And we'll talk a little bit about how to weather that in the last section of this talk. So what has changed? Firstly, there's a new rhythm to life. Secondly, we're seeing an increased focus on these digital real world hybrid models. And then finally, the shifting financial situation. Now, to take us out of this session, I just want to want to share a little bit around how digital can help us find true north in some of these areas, how digital can help us address some of what's changed, take advantage of some of what is staying the same and what's becoming more important in future. And I just want to throw out a few core ideas. And of course, you're more than welcome to engage with us about that afterwards as well. Firstly, I want to say we need to stop viewing digital as auxiliary and see it as core to ministry. Stop seeing it as auxiliary and seeing it as core to ministry. And I cannot say this enough. You know, and often when I say this, people say, yeah, you know, digital is important to us. It's easy to say that digital is important, but is that reflected practically in your ministry model? Like, is it reflected, for example, in where you spend resources? A practical example of that would be the difference between spending on print to advertise what you do as a ministry or to gather people together versus spending on digital to do the same. I don't think pastors on the whole are often recognize the fact that the cost of a single seed drop, you know, the cost of that little card that you put on a seat on a Sunday to inspire someone to come to be part of some program or to take part of what you do as a ministry, the cost that you're spending to reach one person, you could take that and spend that to reach 10 and in some cases 100 people with an even more engaging message that will actually inspire them to come and be a part and join in the community. And often, you know, doing it digitally involves other mechanisms that will remind them and actually inspire them to be there on the day or to take part in ways that you simply don't see with print advertising. So, you know, is your focus on digital reflected in, you know, are you putting your money where your mouth is when it comes to that? Is it reflected in your outreach models? You know, digital allows us today to do very like great targeting to specific audiences. So if I am trying to reach out to seekers in my community, in my town, in my neighborhood, you know, are we aware of the fact that digital allows us to very specifically point very specific and intentional messages to specific groups of people? I don't really see an awareness of that amongst ministries in general. So the question really is does your actions reflect that focus on digital that you profess to? Secondly, we need to stop viewing ministry, digital ministry at least, as a broadcast activity and start seeing it as a community building activity. What we're doing as ministry is we're not broadcasting, we're building community, digital platforms, using social media, using your live stream is not primarily about broadcasting what you're doing. It should be about building, about engaging a growing community around what you do as a ministry. When I first joined, my first job in digital was as in a job title that didn't exist when I left school. That job title was community manager, and it was for a digital platform. So my job was building a community of people around a specific digital product that really felt engaged and that really felt welcome. A lot of digital ministry is about building community. I was reading an article about Stephen Pruitt, who is one of the most prolific editors on Wikipedia. I'm sure you all know Wikipedia, right? Stephen Pruitt has done 35,000 articles on Wikipedia. And I can guarantee you he didn't do 35,000 articles on this digital platform because he didn't have anything better to do with his time. He did it because he was engaged in a digital community, right? This was this group of people working on this digital product was like a family to him. And so, you know, he spends his days unpaid, engaged in this community. The reason he's there is because of community, because of a sense of unity. So stop viewing ministry as a broadcast activity, see it as a community building activity. Too many churches view their online activities as broadcast activities and not as community building activities. Then I also want to say something about seeing digital as key to our financial models. As you know, as ministries, we have financial needs, and so if we're saying the world is shifting to a more digital place, what does that mean for us as ministries? Digital will increasingly be digital platforms will increasingly be conduits for ministry funding. And when I talk about digital giving, I'm not just talking about providing people with digital payment options. I'm not referring to adding SnapScan or some other app or PayPal as a giving option on your church website, for example. When I say digital is a platform where people often give, I'm not saying something that's unproven, actually. I'm saying something that happens in the real world all the time. I often look to the example of what happens in the States. You know, in the USA, often when people have big medical expenses, what do? They set up a GoFundMe, which is this crowdfunding website where you can go and you share your story, you share what it is that you're going through, and people connect with that and people give, right? And so often when we think about digital and we think about giving, we think it's all about providing people with frictionless options to give. And yes, of course, that's a part of the equation. But what is really powerful, and when people really do open up their hearts and give towards something they believe in, is when they connect with a story, is when they connect with the story of your church, when they connect with the story of your ministry. That kind of ministry resource always follows a sense of community, a sense of like people connecting with the story of your ministry. You know, I've seen examples of people becoming engaged with a church digitally from a different country, ultimately ending up tithing to that church, even though they're sitting in a completely different country and in a completely different context. And so what we need to think about when we think about finance and digital is not payment options, but communicating the story, because digital allows us to tell the story, to share the vision, to share what we do as ministry and as people who share the gospel with people who connect with that story. So I want to encourage you to start thinking about digital along those lines, about a platform where you can share your story, where you can build community. But I'm going to stop talking for now. I actually want to pull in Ray Neal. Ray Neal is our marketing manager. Ray, I hope you're on the line there. I want to get you going by maybe just asking you a question leading from what I just spoke about. We all, I'm sure as ministry leaders, many of us would identify with this. We're seeing this increased engagement. Many of us are seeing views on a Sunday. You know, people viewing our live streams, viewing what we do as a ministry online. To me, the first question when I think about that increased engagement is just, you know, why are these people watching? Like, you know, where are they coming from? Why are they there? Do you have a sense of why that is?
Yeah, first of all, hi, hi Heinz. Thank you so much for that intro. My name is Rainiel, I'm the marketing manager at CV Africa. Hi to everyone in the chat and everyone that's joining. Yeah, to answer your question, Heinz, why people are viewing, I think the most important thing is people have spiritual needs. They have this need, that needs to be filled and to be connected, and to be connected by community, most importantly. And so social media, like you've so well articulated, that it really provides an opportunity to bridge the gap between the physical and the digital space. Um, and now, while you've also mentioned that they're separate spaces, but while they're separate, they're very much connected. So um, digital actions can result in physical actions and vice versa. So one of the things that I'm excited to talk about is the views and what they actually mean. And because a lot of people interpret views and they look at all these numbers and they look at all these social reports and the big numbers and they get really excited. But
Yeah, Ray, my dad is a pastor, and he came to me and he said, he's like, well, I have all these people viewing what I do online. What does that mean? Like, where are they coming from? Why are they there? What does it mean to have a view?
yeah, so views are, I wouldn't say it's very interesting, but it's very, like I said, about the two different spaces. Traditionally in a church, someone would come into your church and there's a great potential of that person either becoming part of your church or surrendering their life to Jesus, that sort of thing, in that gathering. And social and digital provides the same opportunity to do that, but a view isn't that. A view is totally different. It's this person who's taken this time to connect with your organization or your ministry, and what it doesn't mean is that that person is part of your church. So no, your dad doesn't have 1,000 church members now online or streaming on live stream. So so there is that, but the best part about it is that now he has that opportunity, or you guys have that opportunity of reaching those people and bringing them in to your community through engagement. And Rob, I'm going to answer your question about what engagement is a little bit later, but I think that in the space now, it's all about you trying to actually connect with that person on a deeper level. And so you can actually, like I said, take those digital activities and make them into real world activities, make that person actually connect and part of your church. And that's the opportunity that we have and we're talking about right now.
Right. Can I ask you a question? Is there an opportunity, a real opportunity, to turn someone who is just happening upon my Facebook feed, who's viewing, to actually have a meaningful connection with that person, maybe even see them, come to church at some point? Is that possible?
Yes. So this is the great thing is, you may have these 1,000 live views, but only through active engagement. And I like to say this, that engagement requires engagement. So if you as a person or ministry are creating this environment where people can come and engage in this, you have to engage on a one-on-one level in order to build that relationship and connect with that person on a deeper level. And so to answer Rob's question about engagement, it's an action metric. It's someone interacting with your content, and that might be through liking something, to commenting on something, and yeah, I think it's a metric and also a connection tool, and like I mentioned before, you kind of have to, you as the content creator or have to draw that out of the person, and also react and respond to people in order to build that connection, because digital connections, unlike real life or the handshake when you come into church, hey, welcome to church, that feeling isn't there. And so you have to really draw out and create that feeling with that person. So, you know, moving on to that, like what Heinz said, digital isn't TV. The model isn't 1 to 1,000. It's 1 to 1. It's that personal connection, you know. And the great thing is, besides the people that are viewing your content through marketing and digital activities, you can actually reach even more people. And, you know, you can actually reach people, like Heinz said, that are outside the scope or the country of where you are, and build this community internationally, I would say. And when I say this stuff, people think, oh my goodness, now he's talking about spending tons of money. Like, what is this going to take? What do we have to do? What check do we have to sign? And the truth is that, you know, everybody that's interacting with your lives are all on social platforms. And these platforms offer an opportunity for you to engage with them on that one-to-one level through marketing. And like Heinz said, you know, this is the days where we can reach people who are not in the church, the unchurched. People are going to ask questions. People are going to question what we're doing as Christians. And that's the engagement that we're talking about. So, you know, going back to like actually connecting with more people, practically speaking, like Facebook, for example, has a really robust platform in which you can target a specific type of audience, a specific type of people. You know, a lot of people who are on this chat are thinking, oh, well, we Facebook boost posts. And that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a little bit more than that. That there's specific tools that you can use to, like you want to do, Rob, create engagement around posts. You know, you can tailor your message or what you want to say and what type of response and reaction. You know, Heinz is talking about seat drops. You know, whenever I meet with churches and ministries, I'm like, guys, please drop your print budget and take it into digital. And let me show you how you can get so much of tangible value from this that's actually measurable. Like when you print a card, the reach of that card is 1, maybe 2 people, you know, and you could never follow that card's journey unless you stuck a GoPro on it. But I don't think that's going to be possible. Whereas when we talk about digital platforms, everything is tracked, everything is measured, you know, and you can track those activities right down to when that person enters your church one day, you know, and I think that's the most important thing. And like I said earlier, you don't need $100,000 budget or R1 million budget to do that. You know, you could do something. I'm talking dollars now because it's international unit, but like, you know, $10 a month, you can reach up to 5,000 people, more people than you would, and a higher opportunity to engage with those people, and you know, reach out to people who don't know the gospel or who potentially don't know about your church. You know, so.
Ray, so just a question. Obviously, what you're talking about now is, I mean, there's a lot to it. It's a very deep subject that you can spend a lot of time on. I'm sure some people watching here have specific practical questions about some of that stuff. Is there a way for them to engage with you, to chat to you, to connect with you at some point beyond this?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to connect with people. I think Michael might drop my contact details in the chat right now, and you can just email me. I think it's important to note that we would love to help you guys with your digital, but I think what we're not doing is tailoring social media strategies to people. But we'd like to help you guys offer advice, and everything that we do is free. And so. Yeah, some of the stuff that we're talking about, or Heinz has spoken about, you know, we can practically help you guys with. And even if you have any Q&A questions at the end, like shoot some questions. If you have any marketing related questions, I'm so excited to answer them.
Thanks, Ray. And of course, and this is where I want to pull in Felony, who's our content manager at CV Africa. Of course, all of this presupposes that you're producing this, you know, content that you're putting out online, and often that we're talking video, but it could be more than that. So the first thing that I think when I think about producing content and making video and all kinds of things like that, immediately, as with Rainiel, my mind goes to, oh my goodness, this is going to cost me a ton of money. Is that the case, Val? Is this, are we talking about megabucks, or is that not the case?
Thank you, Heinz. And I know that, yeah, that's probably a question on everybody's lips right now, with digital becoming more and more the core focus, meaning that your pool of content should obviously be increasing right now to feed that increased online audience number. So this evening, I'm going to share with you how you could go about doing that without the big budget. So no, you don't need as much cash as you assume you do. And how you can just go about creating content by using probably what you already have to its full capacity. So I think the first thing is to actually determine what is it that you want to achieve? What is a message that you want to share? And most importantly, to who? Understanding and not underestimating your audience is crucial. And there's many ways of creating online content, from blogs to images to infographics, but the most challenging for most, and one that I'm going to be focusing on now, is actually video creation. The three main things here is camera, lighting, sound. You're good to go. A fun fact before I go into it is, did you know that the top viral videos on social media from January this year to date were actually all recorded using cell phones? And that's simply because people don't actually care what you use to shoot something. What matters to them is the content itself, what you're showing and what you're telling. And believe it or not, for social media, the rawness and the vulnerability are actually what viewers find appealing. They somehow feel more connected to your content if it's on their level, speaking directly to them. So what I'm saying is, you don't need thousands to invest in a camera right now. Make use of your smartphone. It really does the trick for the purpose of social media content. Many even come with basic editing apps, or even non-expensive ones that you can use to allow for more creativity in post-production. And of course, remember the stack of books that you need to play the role of tripod to get that steady shot that you're looking for. About lighting, now this plays a very important role and should never be taken for granted. Natural lighting works the best, and it's free of charge. Compliments of the Lord. Of course, the only thing you need to do is to be on time, because light isn't going to be waiting for you. You might be needing that golden hour or that soft, even lighting that only happens at certain times of the day. And if you miss it, you miss out. So plan your day accordingly, to get those sort of shots and lighting that you're looking for. Quick tip there is never shoot against the light unless you're looking for a silhouette shot. The next point is sound, and I save the best for last. While on the other two, you can hack a thing or two to make it work, not so much with sound. So if you do have that small budget available, you should actually invest in a good microphone at least. Here, there is no compromise. You can create something that is visually appealing, but if it sounds terrible, it just kills it all. Obviously, you could choose locations that are quiet and peaceful, but it's actually more than that. You're looking for that crisp, clear audio. Now that you have your basic gear sorted, which is literally all you need, there's still a few things that you need to ask yourself. Number one is, what is your goal? Why are you doing this? Very important is, who is your audience? And what do you want to achieve by doing this? Now, remember, you're not just creating content to make your platform or you look good. You're creating content to change mindsets and to change lives. It's not about you, it's about your audience. Your content should be effective, it should be engaging, and it should be shareable. Viewers focus less on the glamour and more on the story, so tell it well. So even though you might not have the big budget and resources to go extreme on the look, you can definitely invest in the emotional aspects that triggers that response and that engagement that Rainiel was talking about. Now, I know many of you might still find this whole video creation thing highly intimidating, or maybe you're just unsure on how to tell the story well. So I'd like to quickly share with you about this website that CV Global has actually created called CV Resources. And here you would find every single piece of content that we have created, not just here in Africa, but globally, in multiple languages, in telling multiple stories, covering a multitude of topics on just about every season. And yes, after just a quick registration process on the site, all of these are free for you to use on your social media platforms. I could see that Michael just added a link to the site as well. So make use of that. And again, no one cares about whether you produce the piece of content or not. People are just looking for something that speaks to them directly. So yes, this is just another way on how you can make a difference online by using what's already freely available. So Heinz, before I hand over back to you, I just want to add one more point. I get this question often, in fact, regarding multiple platforms. A lot of churches and organizations have multiple social media platforms like YouTube and Instagram and Facebook. And people often ask, how do I keep up creating content for all of these platforms? And the answer to that is simple. You're not creating multiple pieces of content. You're creating one main piece of content. And out of that one main piece of content, you're cutting different versions for different platforms. Remember, certain ratios also work better for certain platforms. So it's all in being strategic in spreading out the same piece of content in different forms, depending on which social media platform you're placing it on. I must say that I'm touching the surface here. There's no way I could just share all the tricks in just 10 minutes. But yeah, again, like Renil said, please feel free to reach out to us, and I will assist you as best I can. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Phil. I appreciate that. That's awesome. I think for the last part of this webinar, I want to flip this question almost on its head. We've been talking about how to speak to a wider audience, almost, how to speak to a more to a wider audience. But I want to flip that on its head and talk about how to actually speak better, how to reach people in your own community, around you, how you can do that better. So how you can focus in on where you are and finding those seekers around you. And for that reason, we have our community manager, Nick, joining to chat a little bit about geolocation. Well, the first thing, Nick, I think is you need to tell me what geolocation is, my friend.
Awesome. I will read you an official definition of what geolocation is. Cool. So geolocation in general is the practice of determining the physical real world location of a person or device using digital information. A super practical way to explain this is, sometimes when you're lost and you send someone a pin drop on WhatsApp, well, that's geolocation. It's basically telling someone where you are just through a digital device. So it's anywhere you are in the world with your digital device. Yeah.
Okay, and so how do you and how do you use this to speak to people in your area? How do you use this to find people who are searching for the answers that you are giving as a ministry, as a church in your area?
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks, Lance. I think something that's been so amazing and so apparent just as we speak today is that, as technology changes and as the world changes, the desire for community is still the same. And one of the things we've been working on, and for those of you who don't know, as Michael mentioned at the beginning, as CV, we are an evangelism ministry, an evangelism organization, and we specialize in telling people about Jesus, and we're always looking at new ways to do that. And right now, social media and technology is the best way to navigate those conversations and to connect with the most people as possible. So what we're doing now is we're using geo IP technology to basically connect people from the community around your church who have questions about Jesus, who have questions about faith, directly with your church. So let me share my screen quickly, and I'll quickly talk you through this. It's not too technical, it's not too complicated. Here, let me give this a quick go. Awesome. That's the Zoom icon. Cool. So the platform that we have that uses this geolocation technology, this kind of back-end response routing technology, is called CV Outreach. And it's an amazing back-end system that our team in North America developed. And it's really simple. And the way we use it is that we run a campaign on a social media platform. So the example you're seeing now is a video that we run on Facebook. It's actually, the title of the video is actually, funny enough, called Middle of the Night. And we run it from 12 at night till I think about 3 in the morning. Ray would have to confirm with me. And it's literally just a front-on shot of a lady just saying, you know, I don't know what's keeping you up right now. I don't know why you're up at night, but I just want you to know that Jesus loves you and he wants to have a relationship with you. So this ad runs between 12 at night and 3 in the morning. And similar to what Felony was saying, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be the most high-end video or high quality. In fact, this is just a single shot of a lady speaking to camera. And so we run this campaign at those times, and we'll target certain countries, or we'll target certain places. Specifically, we'll target as much as possible non-Christians. So we try not to put this video in front of Christians. We try to put them in front of non-Christians. And then once someone's watched this video and they want to respond, they can actually click on, if I go back, they can click on the Learn More button. And this comes up with a response form. And as you can see, people can put in what their response is, their full name, their number, their email address, what country they are, and then click next. Then what happens is normally this response would just go to the Facebook Messenger account or the Facebook owner of that specific account. But what we've now done is we have a network of amazing church partners all around the continent. In fact, some of them are actually on this call. So shout out to Awali from DPC in Tanzania and Mike Vincent, just a few of our amazing church partners. What happens is then this response goes into our back-end CV outreach system. And as you can see, this is just an image of a few of the church partners we have around the continent. And this response is then routed to the closest church partner we have. So basically what it does is as someone responds, it detects where in the continent they are or where in the world they are, and then sends that response to the closest church partner that we have. So what it would look like is, this is generally what a response would look like that a partner would receive. So this person's answer was, I need to be God's child. We've just blanked out, obviously, their phone number and their name, but you can see where they are. They're from Cape Town, the Western Cape. You can see what video they watched, and there's actually a link to go back and look at the video that they had seen when responding. So this is what a response form would look like that a church partner would receive. And I've just got my contact details here, so I'll leave that on the screen. But the reason we want to show you this is just to say that there are amazing ways to be able to connect with people right in your community that you didn't even know were asking questions about Jesus, that you didn't even know were interested in anything to do with faith. And if this is something that you're interested in, you know, we would love to chat to you and work alongside you. And again, this is obviously just an example of a couple of the things that we do at CV. But we've just been seeing I think specifically now during COVID, with so many people having questions about just the meaning of life and wondering, you know, is there hope? What's going to happen next? You know, so much has already happened. This, you know, people are desperate for, just change. And, you know, in times of desperation, where do we turn? To Google or to Facebook. And so we're just seeing an amazing engagement with people, and we're just being able to connect
Nick,
with people like never before.
Nick, just a question. So I'm looking at the system. First thing I think is, okay, well, what's it going to cost to do this? You know, as a church or as a ministry, could you speak to that?
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the things that we're really fortunate enough to be able to say as a ministry, as CV, is that, you know, everything we do is 100% free. We're here to tell people about Jesus and walk alongside the local church and help serve the local church. You know, so you know, this, like anything else we do, is always 100% free. There's no catches. There's no, you know, invoice that comes at the end of the month. You know, we really want to be able to connect, you know, people who are genuinely interested in a relationship with Jesus back to a church in their community, in their neighborhood, in their suburb, you know, where they can find that home, that sense of community. They can find answers to some of life's toughest questions. And yeah, I mean, ultimately what we want to do is just really, as I said earlier, tell people about Jesus and connect them into a church in their community.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And do I have to use that video that you showed? Can I use a different one? Is that the video that I need?
Well, what's nice about the system is that in terms of getting church partners on board, it's very simple, in fact. So as CV, as Ray mentioned, you know, our marketing team is running campaigns on a daily basis. So literally we run videos, multiple videos on multiple social media platforms on a daily basis. And so we're constantly having these responses come through. So it's always different pieces of content that are generating these responses. And what we often try and do is rely on our partners to give us feedback on, you know, what are some of the topics that are coming up in your community? What are some of the issues that people are facing, so that we can then pass that information on to Felony and her team, and they'll then produce the content so that we can run campaigns that actually speak to what's happening in a specific country or speak to what's happening within the continent. Yeah, and all again through the lens of just telling people about Jesus, connecting people with Jesus and connecting them to a local church. So it's very easy to sign up. If you reach out to me and you're interested, I'd love to tell you more. It's a very streamlined process, and yeah, again, no money involved. And yeah, cool.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Nick. I'm sure a few people will have questions to ask, but I'm gonna leave it at that. I think I'm gonna hand over to Mike again. Mike, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Heinz. Thanks everyone for joining. I don't see any other additional questions. Please do reach out to us if you have anything that you'd like to ask. You just reach out to us at Africa@CV Global, or you could just visit our website, cvglobal.co. Yeah, we'd love to connect with you and just discuss anything further that you'd like to. Thanks so much for joining with us. Why doesn't everyone can wave goodbye? And yeah, that'll be that. Thank you so much. Cheers, bye-bye.